So Absolute Green Lantern is such a strange and compelling story so far. It's such a mystery of how they're changing up the Green Lantern lore. And frankly, I'm all for it. Though it is a little bit confusing since we don't have all the puzzle pieces right here. But if you see the vision just like how I see it, this could potentially and genuinely be one of the best Absolute books so far, or just in general. But so here we pick up with Hal Jordan, but this version of Hal Jordan is a far cry from what we're usually used to seeing. And we pick up in the middle of the story 5 days after the giant catastrophe happened, which we will see a little bit more info on that in a second. But for now, what we can confidently say is this version of Hal Jordan, yeah, he isn't all there and all right. There is something in his head, something on his body as well, that is almost corrupting and changing him. As something, an entity, a force in his head being shown as some sort of dark circle or void. It goes on to say that you are in the absence of light, and I am the secret heart within every star, so be without fear. Hal Jordan, you must be without fear, which by itself is very ominous and suspicious, but even more so when we see Hal Jordan here walking on the side of a road in the middle of the desert. A police officer drives up, trying to get some questions about what is he doing, this is unorthodox in this heat. Someone just walking, you're about to reach the border soon. And it makes it even worse when it seems like Hal is trying to hide something in his pocket. And from the officer's perspective, it kind of seems like Hal Jordan is just some sort of tweaker, just a crazy man on drugs or something walking on the side of the road. So the police tries to do his due diligence and search him, as he then escalates it to holding Hal at gunpoint, telling him to drop whatever it is in his pocket. But obviously the officer doesn't know what he's dealing with, because this is going to be one of his most fatal mistakes he has ever made. As Hal Jordan being pushed to the brink of literally being shot, he almost has no other option, as he slowly reaches his hand back. And no, he isn't carrying some sort of weapon or direct object, but the black entity, the dark spot, the black hand, makes a sliver of an appearance and just completely eviscerates and smites the officer, gone, reduced to atoms. Whatever happened to Hal Jordan and whatever he is carrying is something very evil and ancient, but we do see a very cool Easter egg. The badges that the officer had, they are left alone. They weren't eviscerated like him, and something they have in common is they share the color yellow, which is very interesting. After Hal Jordan just completely eviscerating that officer, we then see him continue on to go to his destination at a little diner or hotspot where he can refresh and refuel. Though immediately as he walks in, the entire atmosphere shifts. It's almost like the little thing he's carrying, the entity, the dark hand, as you will soon find out it is called, is affecting everyone and everywhere. And while he's here, the news suddenly shifts from the Lakers game the people were in the diner were watching before into the current live news, where we see a giant Green Lantern symbol completely decimating and crushing a local town. The town Evergreen, the place where Hal Jordan just came from. And just like that, we move back over into the past where everything started 5 days ago, where we see Hal with some of his other friends. In this universe, John Stewart and Joe Mullen, two distinct people and different lanterns within the main DC universe. Though it's kind of interesting here how they all know each other in this case, when normally before they even become lanterns, they don't really have direct connection to each other. Also a pretty interesting change here, that instead of Hal being, in the Air Force, a pilot, instead in this universe he's just some sort of collector, a collector of rare items and collectibles and toys to resell, and that's what he does. Whereas John Stewart here, instead of him being in the Marines like he sometimes is, he is an architect, and Joe, in the same fashion, was a police officer but quit and moved on. All while this group of friends are just having a little chat and enjoying their lunch, we see a group of bikers come just revving by, causing a scene, which one of them becomes very unfortunate in a second here. But after just paying them no mind, and even Joe going on to say that Guy Gardner, the sheriff in this Evergreen town, another normal member of the Green Lantern Corps, but Guy Gardner would eventually hear them from how loud they were being and do whatever a cop does, arrest them and get them to stop. And while the trio here eventually gets back to their lunch, the vibes are good, everybody's enjoying themselves until one more of the bikers, a part of the little gang here, comes revving by, just going to pass through a little town here until he is just completely eviscerated by the dropping of some green dome. Blood and gore just everywhere, bits and pieces flying as a motorcycle comes crashing in at over 100 miles. And having just watched this scene unfold, this crazy occurrence, the trio get up to go investigate. And even as this biker hit this green wall, his body just completely exploded and there's nothing really left of him, except one yellow ring. There just goes another yellow object, surviving and being the only thing left after an encounter with a special property, a special power, which becomes a reoccurring theme, as we will soon see. But we find out this object, this almost dome, as it seems, is encasing only a small part of the town, trapping a bunch of citizens and the trio here within as everybody else is able to flee and get out of there. They can't even call for backup as whoever this encasing is blocking any cell reception, and they're completely confused about what's going on until they look up and see a figure floating down. A very bizarre and strange looking alien, this universe's version of Abin Sur. Now, if you're familiar, Abin Sur is the Green Lantern that gave Hal his ring, Hal Jordan's predecessor. Now, usually he looks completely different, not this almost Majin Buu looking copycat as we see here, but for all intents and purposes, this is him. Now, we aren't sure if the Green Lanterns in his universe are even good people. As you could probably tell with most other things in his absolute universe, things are completely shifted and changed. So imagine the Green Lantern Corps and all the other light spectrum and other lanterns for that matter. For all we know, they could be completely different and changed. But we move back into the present, 5 days later, after all that has occurred, with Hal Jordan still in his diner. And eventually tensions rise as the focus now shifts onto Hal. Him, after watching the news footage, he starts crying and almost has PTSD about the events that occurred there. Some of the other patrons are getting worried about him because he has his hand in his pocket, like some sort of weapon. Again, same thing that the police did earlier. And one of the patrons, tries to be the hero, tries to stop Hal if he did have a weapon, a gun, or a knife in his hand. Unfortunately, as we're going to see, it is 100 times worse than that, as when he grabs Hal's hand out of his jacket, the void, the dark spot, the black hand completely eviscerates the man. It kind of gives me the same effect and vibe of the void from the Century. But once more, as you can see, while it did completely eviscerate and make the man go bye-bye, it left his yellow pendant, his yellow necklace around his neck. So whatever these light constructs or these light abilities, whether it be green or black, they really don't interfere or interact with the color yellow. Hal Jordan, after seemingly taking another life, goes on to say that it's the hand. He's holding it back with all he has, using all of his willpower. But he just can't control it. It responds to danger. So that doesn't make it any better when the person behind the counter had a gun for emergency situations such as this and just decides to shoot Hal Jordan point blank multiple times in the chest. Now this right here, this is when everything lets loose because Hal Jordan being shot, he lets his guard down and lets the black hand completely take over. And when he comes to, everything is just destroyed. The diner itself, all of the people there seemingly dead as well. Hal Jordan just racking up his list of confirmed kills. But he was shot and he's bleeding pretty heavily, so he thinks, well, at least if I die, I could take this weird entity that is attached to me with me, but the entity has a will of his own almost and goes to heal him. Matters get even more interesting as suddenly Joe Mullen from before comes into the diner fully decked out in Green Lantern energy and the Green Lantern symbol. Meaning whatever happened there at that event with Abin Sur seemed to have wildly different outcomes for the people present. And you might think, okay, well, she's a full-fledged Green Lantern here somehow. Surely she's going to be the good guy in this situation, being able to defeat Hal Jordan and at least bring him back to his senses. But it seems like even her here, she herself is very confused, as when we cut her perspective, we see she is seeing the same thing Hal Jordan is seeing. There's some sort of circle, some sort of void telling her to be without fear, that she exists at the green level of light. And to command this power, she must be completely without fear, making it seem like whatever are affecting Hal and Joe here, they're almost like tests, giving them instructions on how to overcome it, if they can do so and master these new abilities or powers. And even she goes on to say that the only reason she is here is because the green ring on her finger, the Green Lantern ring, was drawing her, leading her to Hal Jordan and whatever power he also has. As we go on to see that it's officially named the Black Hand. Now this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, because, well, it's very ominous and evil sounding, the Black Hand. Secondly, the Black Hand in the main DC universe is already a character, a Green Lantern villain. Though here, as you will see, the villain or power is attached to Hal Jordan. In the main DC universe, the Black Hand had ties to the Black Lantern Corps in Necron. So if you kind of connect the dots, it seems like Hal here got part of the Black Lantern spectrum of light, whereas Joe got part of the green. We get a little bit more information about what exactly this Black Hand power is, as Hal even goes on to say, I gave it all I had to hold it back, but just willing it, using willpower, which Hal Jordan is famously known to have a bunch of and only really being surpassed by Kal Rayner, he says his willpower is the only thing that kind of keeps it at bay. But with 2 of the 3 previously shown other Lantern people in the main DC universe, here, there only leaves one other person, John Stewart. As once more, we cut back in time to when everything was going down. Right in the midst of this giant alien catastrophe, with Abin Sur going on to say, I am the Abin Sur, so have understanding that I come from the Green Lantern. I exist at the green level of light, so be without fear. Which is kind of funny, this hulking alien creature cutting off a town with his giant lantern dome, telling everybody to be without fear. Kind of reminds me of the biblically accurate angels, be not afraid situation. So here in this situation, we see one of the first people this alien comes into contact with is Guy Gardner, the the chief of the police here in Evergreen. And instead of just coming on guns blazing, at the very least, Guy Gardner tries to diplomat his way and try to ease the understanding with this alien invasion and invader coming, saying that he's a sheriff here and that makes him the authority, the law. Abin Sur, you do have understanding about laws, right? Abin Sur even going on to agree, saying, yes, I have understanding, but judgment will now commence, as he starts to swirl his green mysterious energy and aims it directly at the people. Specifically at Guy Gardner first, going on to say that judgment is in process. Guy Gardner, you are not an entity who currently exists in the spectrum of light. Be without fear. Now the way he says and presents it here is very interesting, and I'm not too sure how to take it or fully unravel it, because Abin Sur goes on to say that he does not currently exist in the spectrum of light, when usually in the main DC universe, everybody who has emotions, that is, experiences exist on some sort or on some level of the emotional spectrum. But what I think he means here is that he is not yet a herald or a part of whatever team or color of the spectrum of light, as in green, you're blue, you're red. And Abin Sur here is judging them to see if they are worthy almost, which is an interesting departure from the normal canon timeline. And as things and tension starts to rise, eventually it's actually Joe here who gets Guy Gardner to fully put his weapon down and just try and talk it out, though as much as you can against a seemingly hostile alien invasion. And her specifically having some problems with Rita, another person on the police force that she was buddies with, or cool with at least, before she of course left and retired. Gardner here actually listens. Usually he is the hothead. He would go into a situation guns blazing and try to just outmuscle it. But here, he tries to start again. Try to achieve a full understanding of the situation if they can end this peacefully. But it seems like this alien invader, whether it be Green Lantern or not, has other plans as he just blasts and eviscerates Guy Gardner. Going on to say that Guy Gardner has been judged. Now, I was not sure what this means, if he failed the judgment and just got eviscerated and died, or if he somehow completed and got sent elsewhere. But what we do know for sure is he isn't done judging and plans to do it more with some of the other humans here. But the police force, just seeing their captain just get obliterated, they start to open fire. It's ineffective, of course, but the bullets ricochet off of the alien's green shield. Some of the bullets even hit him back and killing some of the civilians in the crowd, which has crazy consequences. But maybe this action here goes to show you that the alien, Abin Sur's motives aren't completely evil, or as one might infer from the actions here, as after seeing Rita, the police officer from before, accidentally and inadvertently kill someone in the audience, Abin Sur just goes to literally decapitate her. And no, not just neutralize, fully just kill her on the spot. Head rolling off, blood gushing, it's pretty violent and crazy. And even the other officer, as he goes to shoot, he kind of uses Sukuna's slashes, if you're familiar with the JJK, and starts just slashing people's arms and hands off. So it's still ambiguous just where this alien falls, or in the Green Lanterns in general, on the scale of good to evil, which is pretty on brand for this absolute universe. Through the panic of all of this going on, Hal Jordan makes a rash decision, picking up the gun of one of the officers that, his hand just got cut off, and goes to confront this alien one-on-one. Which, just seeing how he just effortlessly defeated the other police officers and people with actual training, there's not much that Hal could realistically do. Though the alien doesn't just straight up start to kill Hal, he instead goes to judge him just like he did Guy Gardner. And also, you might have noticed that the alien, Abin Sur, knows their names completely. So there's some sort of otherworldly power at foot. Maybe it's the Green Lantern energy, or maybe he's come here for these people specifically. But before Hal could just get himself killed by pulling the trigger and having Abin Sur defend himself, we see John Stewart step in to be the voice of reason, telling Hal finger off of the trigger. You saw what happened to everybody else who tried to attack this thing. Having his back turned to the very murderous alien who we just saw take out multiple people, showing no fear to the situation and fully set on saving his friend, which actually doesn't go unnoticed, as the alien instead turns to John Stewart, calling him out by name and telling him to be without fear before turning into some sort of green energy ball, or almost a lantern ring itself, and shooting up into the sky and going away. But as we cut back over into the present, 5 days after all of that has happened, where we see how Jordan inflicted with his black hand, and Joe with the actual Green Lantern power, which we never saw her interact with Abin Sur, so there's still a little bit of disconnect and mystery there. We find out that Hal Jordan never gave back the gun he was holding and he was supposed to John Stewart. Instead, he kept it, and it seems like the gun is actually the thing that is inflicting this black hand entity or black hand ailment to him. And maybe it's symbolic. A gun acts as a weapon, something that it's used to take life and consume it. As even Hal goes on to say that whatever this is, it's hungry. It's something alien and it wants the light. And no, not just the green light that we've seen Ab and Sur use or even Joe here, but any spectrum of light. It wants to absorb it. No, supersede it, overturn it. Whatever this entity is, it is very old. It should have been forgotten. It should be weak. An idea that nobody believes. But something fed it and gave it a chance. And now it's everywhere. A little piece in everything. This black hand that seems to have bonded itself to Hal Jordan, it seems like he is fighting against it, using all of his willpower to keep it at bay. It even goes on to whisper and talk to him in his head, very symbiote-like from Marvel, like Venom. And whatever it is, it keeps telling Hal that he was right, that he made the right decisions in keeping this and going to consume whatever he can. Now again, I'm not too sure what to make of this. It could be something related to the Black Lanterns, which would make sense in a Green Lantern story, but at the same time, this is pretty different and pretty weird. So it could be something new entirely, which also could be very interesting depending on how they go with it. But moving over into almost an epilogue, if you will, we see the trio here, right after the events of Ab and Sur, and once he left, them talking about the events that just transpired and how the whole town is still under that green dome. But we see Jon Stewart here, while being the voice of reason from before, also might be their saving grace, as he goes on to say, whatever is happening here, whatever alien judgment is being upon us, I don't think anyone is coming to save us from it. So if it does come to it and we need to take Ab and Sur out of the equation, I think I know what can do it, as he holds up a yellow ring. Now, at first glance, you might think, oh wow, this might be a yellow lantern ring, but it seems just to be one of the rings from one of the people there at the actual battle and attack. Jon Stewart, for whatever reason, finding out that the light spectrum doesn't affect the color yellow or anything with it. As of course we've seen throughout the entire previous battles and things going on, whether it's black or green, it doesn't really interfere in yellow, which could be a very determining factor going forward that Jon Stewart is now made aware of. And you know how crazy it would be if Jon Stewart somehow does become a Yellow Lantern? So many places where this can go. But if you have enjoyed, leave a like or subscribe if you're new and want to see more content just like this. As always, this was AJ here at the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.